March 28, 2024.
Hmm.
Most people probably don't have that date circled on their calendar, but in the timeline of financial history, that was the asteroid impact. That was the day the gavel finally came down in a Manhattan courtroom, and the sentence was read out. 25 years.
And let's not forget the forfeiture order. $11 billion.
Right. 11 billion. It's a number so large it turns into an abstraction. You can't even visualize $11 billion.
Yeah.
But you can visualize a 25-year sentence. That is a quarter of a century. And what really struck me about that day wasn't just the finality of it. It was the absolute, the starkness of the contrast.
The contrast between the inmate and the icon.
Exactly. I mean, you just rewind the clock 2 years before that. Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF, he wasn't just some rich guy.
No, he was phenomena.
He was the 41st richest American. He was on the cover of Forbes, Fortune, you name it. He was sitting on panels with Bill Clinton and Tony Blair. He was sold as the white knight of crypto.
Yeah.
The one who is going to bridge this gap between the chaotic digital frontier and the serious world of Washington regulation. And then just like that, snap. He's standing there in a beige prison jumpsuit, listening to Judge Cackling completely dismantle his entire existence.
It's the ultimate Icarus story, isn't it? But I think people get the Icarus metaphor wrong in this context.
How so?
Icarus flew too close to the sun because he was reckless. He was high on the thrill of it.
Yeah.
SBF wasn't just reckless, as we're going to get into. This was a calculated, almost mathematical deconstruction of the rules.
Right.
Because he truly fundamentally believed the rules didn't apply to him.
That's the key distinction, isn't it? This wasn't some kind of accident. And that is what we are unpacking today. We are doing a proper deep dive into the rise and the catastrophic fall of SBF and FTX. And I don't want to just recycle the headlines everyone saw on Twitter. We have a massive stack of sources here. Biographical records, the raw court transcripts from United States v. Bankman-Fried, the bankruptcy filings, and even the prison incarceration logs.
And honestly, the source material is darker and weirder than the headlines ever captured. When you really dig into the mechanics of the fraud, the specific lines of code they wrote to steal the money,
Yeah.
and the psychological environment they built around themselves, it's genuinely terrifying.
Our mission today is to really understand those mechanics. How do you actually steal $8 billion without the auditors noticing? What is the psychology of a guy who plays video games while pitching Sequoia Capital?
And wins?
And wins, and then how does that same brain adapt to, trading fish packets in a federal penitentiary?
It is quite the arc.
So let's start at the very beginning, because usually when we hear about financial fraudsters, there's this narrative of the scrappy outsider, the guy who wanted to break into the club but wasn't invited, so he kicked the door down.
Right.
That is not Sam Bankman-Fried.
Not even close. He was born inside the club. March 5, 1992, Stanford, California. I mean, his parents, Joseph Bankman and Barbara Fried, are both tenured professors at Stanford Law School.
At Stanford Law.
And we aren't talking about obscure academics here. They are titans in the fields of tax law and legal ethics.
Which adds a very thick layer of irony to this whole story.
It does, but I think you have to look at what they taught. His mother, Barbara Fried, is a prominent consequentialist.
Okay, let's pause there. Consequentialist. For the listener who hasn't touched a philosophy textbook since college, break that down for us, because I have a feeling this is the root of the whole problem.
It's a huge part of it. So consequentialism is the ethical theory that the morality of an action is determined solely by its consequences.
So the ends justify the means.
In a nutshell, yes. If the outcome is good, the action itself was good. It stands in direct contrast to, say, deontology, which says there are certain hard rules like do not lie or do not steal that you must follow regardless of the outcome.
So if I lie to you, but that lie ends up saving 5 people from a burning building, a consequentialist would say the lie was not just acceptable, but it was the moral thing to do.
Exactly. Now imagine growing up in a household where that is the dinner table conversation.
Yeah.
Where rigid rules are viewed as sort of irrational and everything is just a calculation of utility.
Right.
SBF didn't just learn this, he breathed it.
Yeah.
He grew up in a world of high-level intellectual debate where you could basically argue your way out of anything if the math on your side worked out.
It explains so much about his later defenses in court. Mistakes were made, but my intentions were good.
Precisely. So that's the home environment. And then you move on to his education. He goes to the Canada USA math camp. This isn't just summer school.
No.
This is for the outliers, the kids who see the matrix.
Yeah, the real prodigies.
And that naturally funneled him right into MIT. He graduated in 2014, physics major, math minor. But I think the most telling part of his MIT experience wasn't the classroom. It was where he lived.
Epsilon Theta.
Epsilon Theorem.
Yeah. I've read about this place. It sounds less like a frat house and more like a social experiment or something.
That's a great way to put it. It was a co-ed group house.
Mm-hmm.
And they prided themselves on being very distinct from the frat bro culture.
Mm-hmm.
It was intensely intellectual, heavily focused on games, puzzles, high-level debate.
Mm-hmm.
But they also had this culture of what's been called polycule adjacent living. Very few boundaries, lots of shared intimacy, sleep piles, that sort of thing.
Which effectively became the blueprint for the FTX corporate housing later on in the Bahamas.
Precisely. He never really left Epsilon Theta. He just recreated it in the Bahamas with $1 billion budget. He learned that you could blend your work life, your social life, and your romantic life into one indistinguishable blob, and that there were no real boundaries.
So he leaves MIT. He has the math brain. He has this consequentialist ethical framework, and he lands at Jane Street Capital. Now, we need to spend some time here because every profile mentions Jane Street, but they usually just say it's a high-frequency trading firm. But Jane Street is a very specific type of beast, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's almost like a cult of rationality. Jane Street is a proprietary trading firm. That means they trade their own money, not clients' money. They're famous, absolutely famous, for their obsession with one concept, expected value, or EV.
EV. Okay, this is the concept that seems to drive everything SBF did. Explain how that mindset works in practice at a place like Jane Street.
So at Jane Street, they would bet on anything, literally anything. What's the weather going to be in an hour? Will this person walk through that door in the next 60 seconds? They are constantly calibrating their probability assessments.
Okay.
The core idea is this. If you offer me a bet where I have a 51% chance of winning $1 and a 49% chance of losing $1, I should take that bet every single time. Because over 1,000 flips, the expected value is positive.
Even if the downside of losing is really painful in the short term.
That's the catch. In pure EV theory, if the math is positive, you take the risk. Jane Street teaches you to be completely risk neutral. You don't fear loss, you just fear bad math.
Oh.
SBF absorbed this completely. There's a now famous anecdote where he discussed a theoretical coin flip. Heads, the world becomes twice as good as it is now. Tails, the world is completely destroyed.
And he said he would take that flip.
He said he'd keep flipping it. He'd take the 50% risk of total annihilation over and over because the expected value of creating a paradise world was technically infinite.
That is a dangerous way to operate a civilization.
And it turns out, a terrible way to run a bank.
It completely desensitizes you to catastrophe. If you go bankrupt, you just say, well, the math was right. I just got unlucky on the variant.
Exactly. And that brings us to his exit from Jane Street. He leaves in 2017 to start Alameda Research. And this is where the legend really begins, the kimchi premium.
The kimchi premium. This is the origin story. It's the started in a garage moment for crypto. But I feel like people gloss over how hard this actually was. They just say, oh, Bitcoin was more expensive in Japan, so he bought low and sold high. If it was that easy, why wasn't everyone doing it?
That is exactly the right question to ask. The arbitrage opportunity itself was obvious. Bitcoin might be trading at $10,000 in the US and $11,000 in Japan or Korea. That's a free 10% spread.
Yeah, free money.
But the friction, the real-world friction, was immense. The Japanese and Korean banking systems are notoriously insular and bureaucratic. You can't just wire $10 million into a Japanese bank account as a foreigner without triggering every single money laundering alarm bell in Tokyo.
So the hard part wasn't the crypto side of it. It was the fiat currency. It was getting the dollars and yen moved around.
It's always the fiat. SBF's genius here, and it was a form of genius, was navigating that bureaucracy. He set up this incredibly complex web of intermediaries and local directors to satisfy the Japanese banks. He essentially built a logistical pipe that allowed him to move up to $25 million a day out of Japan.
And that's where the boy genius myth crystallized, right? He wasn't just another coder. He was this guy who could hack the real-world banking system.
It validated his entire worldview. He proved he could solve a problem that stumped the rest of the market. And he made an absolute fortune doing it. This gave him the capital and, more importantly, the confidence to launch FTX in 2019.
But before we get to FTX, we have to talk about the motivation he presented to the world. Because SBF wasn't buying Ferraris. He was driving a Toyota Corolla. He was famous for sleeping on beanbags. He claimed this was all for a philosophy called effective altruism.
EA, earning to give.
We touched on his utilitarian upbringing, but EA takes it a step further. It's not just about doing good, it's about optimizing good, right?
Right. It's about maximizing your impact. The classic example is, if you work at a soup kitchen, you help maybe 50 people a day. That's nice. Feels good. But if you become a billionaire trader and donate that money to, say, mosquito net distribution in Africa, you could save 50,000 lives.
So therefore, the most moral imperative is to get as rich as humanly possible.
Exactly. But there's a darker, more extreme side to EA that SBF fully subscribed to called long-termism.
Okay, this is crucial.
This is crucial. Long-termism posits that the lives of the trillions of humans who will potentially live in the future, thousands, even millions of years from now, are just as valuable, if not more valuable, than the people alive today.
So your priority shouldn't be fixing poverty now or curing cancer now.
No. It should be preventing a future AI apocalypse or a meteor strike that could wipe out the entire future of the human species.
And this creates a terrifying moral license. Because if your stated goal is to save 1 trillion future humans from a rogue AI, then stealing from 1 million current humans is, what, a rounding error?
It's a justifiable sacrifice in that framework.
Exactly.
If you truly believe you are the Messiah for the future of the species, then standard, everyday ethics like don't commit wire fraud look like petty, irrational hurdles.
Wow.
SBF viewed himself as a soldier fighting for the future, which allowed him to rationalize the crimes of the present.
So with that mindset, that he is basically the protagonist of reality, he builds FTX, and he builds it incredibly fast.
Unbelievably fast.
Phew.
Founded in 2019, and by September 2021, he's moving the whole operation from Hong Kong to the Bahamas.
And it wasn't just one company.
No, it was over 130 affiliated companies by the end. A complete labyrinth designed to be confusing.
And he needed to sell this labyrinth to investors. Which brings us to the image. The cargo shorts, the wild, unkempt hair. For a long time, people just thought, oh, he's just too busy and brilliant to care about his appearance. But that wasn't true, was it?
No, not at all. Caroline Ellison, his ex-girlfriend and the CEO of Alameda, testified in court that the look was completely calculated. SBF realized early on back at James Street that if he looked a little crazy, people thought he was smarter.
So it's a costume.
It was absolutely a costume. He believed he got better bonuses at Jane Street when his hair was at its messiest.
It's the Einstein effect, right? If you look like you don't know how to use a comb, you must be too busy contemplating the unified field theory to be bothered.
And Silicon Valley eats that up. They don't want a guy in a Brooks Brothers suit. That looks like old finance. They want a disruptor. The most famous example, of course, is the pitch to Sequoia Capital.
Oh, God, the League of Legends pitch is legendary.
He is on a Zoom call pitching one of the most prestigious, powerful venture capital firms on the planet for hundreds of millions of dollars. And during the call, he is audibly playing the video game League of Legends. You can hear the mouse clicking.
And the craziest part is not that he did it, but that it worked.
It worked like a charm. Sequoia wrote this glowing profile on him, which they have since scrubbed from the internet, where they gushed about it. They said things like, we're talking to a future trillionaire. It was a power move.
Yeah.
It signaled, I don't need your money. I'm barely paying attention to you, and you're still going to write me a $200 million check.
It establishes dominance, and it allowed him to expand his web of influence so aggressively. They weren't just buying up crypto assets. They were trying to buy legitimacy.
That's the perfect word for it. They bought a 7.6% stake in Robinhood.
Why Robinhood?
That was strategic. Robinhood is the bridge to the mainstream retail stock trading world. If FTX could merge with or acquire Robinhood, they become this all-in-one financial super app.
And then there was the whole episode with Elon Musk and the Twitter purchase.
Yeah, SBF's advisor texted Musk's team saying Sam was good for up to $5 billion to help take Twitter private.
$5 billion?
Musk, to his credit, seemed pretty skeptical. He asked his advisor, does he actually have $5 billion in liquid cash? And the answer, as we now know, was a definitive no.
Not even close. And then the wildest one of all, the island of Nauru.
This brings us right back to that survivalist, long-termist paranoia. This was a real project. They actually looked into buying Nauru, a sovereign island nation in Micronesia.
To do what with it?
The plan was to build a bunker, a sort of doomsday shelter for the effective altruists to survive a global catastrophe and, repopulate the earth with rational utilitarian thinkers.
It sounds like a James Bond villain plot. I will buy a sovereign nation to restart civilization in my own image. It just shows how detached from reality they had all become.
Well, you have billions of dollars, even if it's just monopoly money on a spreadsheet, and absolutely no one in your life is telling you no, Your wildest fantasies start to look like legitimate business plans.
Okay, so we have the motive, the image, and the sprawling empire. Now we need to look under the hood. We need to talk about the fraud itself, because this wasn't just, oops, we lost some money in a bad trade. This was structural theft from day one.
This is Section 3, the mechanics of the fraud. And it all centers on the relationship between FTX, the exchange, and Alameda Research, the hedge fund.
And just to be clear for the listener, normally an exchange and a trading firm are supposed to be like church and state. They should be completely separate.
Absolutely, 100% separate. If you deposit money into an exchange like Coinbase or Kraken, that money is supposed to sit there. It's your money. The exchange makes its profit on transaction fees. They should never, ever be gambling with your deposits.
But Alameda was gambling, and they were gambling with FTX customer money.
On a massive scale.
So how did they physically get the money from point A to point B? Because as I understand it, there were two main ways, two big buckets of fraud.
Two main buckets is right. The first was what you could call the fiat processing loophole. In the early days of FTX, traditional banks were still very wary of crypto. They wouldn't give FTX a corporate bank account.
Right, it would seem as too risky.
But Alameda Research, being a trading firm, already had established bank accounts. So SBF came up with a solution. He told customers, if you want to fund your account on the FTX exchange, just wire your US dollars to this bank account here.
And that bank account was owned by Alameda Research.
Exactly. So you, the customer, think you're funding your FTX trading account, but you're actually wiring your life savings directly to a completely separate, high-risk hedge fund.
Wow.
And for years, SBF claimed in public that that money was just sitting there, segregated and safe. But in reality, Alameda was spending it on risky trades, venture investments, political donations, everything. We are talking about $8 billion of customer deposits that never even touched FTX's own corporate structure. It went straight to the casino.
That's the first bucket. But the second mechanism is even more damning because it involved deliberately tampering with the platform's software itself. The code tweak.
This is the smoking gun. This is what you can't explain away as an accident. Gary Wang, the CTO and co-founder of SBF, had known since Math Camp, testified under oath that SBF ordered him to add a special feature to FTX's code just for Alameda.
Okay, now you've looked at the technical details of this. What exactly did this line of code do?
So every crypto exchange has something called the liquidation engine, an automated piece of software. If you borrow money to make a trade, leverage, and your position drops below a certain value, the engine automatically sells your assets to pay back the loan.
It's a safety feature. It protects the exchange from going bankrupt if traders lose too much.
It's a critical safety feature. It's ruthless, and it happens in milliseconds. It protects the entire system.
Unless you're Alameda.
Unless you're Alameda. Gary Wang added a flag in the database, literally a single line of code, a Boolean setting, allow negative. For Alameda and only for Alameda, this setting was switched to true. The liquidation engine was turned off for them.
So they could borrow infinite money, lose it all, go billions and billions of dollars into debt to the exchange, and the system would just never stop them.
Exactly. It was an essentially unlimited line of credit, backed by their own customers' funds. At one point, Alameda had a negative balance of $65 billion on the FTX exchange. The code was hardwired to look the other way.
That's not negligence. That's not, I lost track of the spreadsheets, which was his defense. That is a deliberate, premeditated engineering decision to bypass the most fundamental safety protocol on the entire platform.
And that's why the I didn't know defense completely fell apart at trial. You don't accidentally write a specific code exemption for your own personal hedge fund. It's impossible.
But they had to hide this massive $65 billion hole. And to do that, they needed to buy protection. They needed friends in high places. Which brings us to the political machine they built. SBF wasn't just donating out of the kindness of his heart.
Not even slightly. He was trying to buy the referee. He was pushing very hard for a specific bill in Congress, the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act.
And what would that have done?
It would have given the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, primary oversight over the crypto industry.
And why did he want the CFTC instead of, say, the SEC?
Because the CFTC is generally seen as a smaller agency, perhaps a little more manageable than the much larger and more aggressive SEC. He was trying to handpick his own regulator. And to do that, he needed to buy influence on both sides of the aisle.
The numbers here are just staggering. In the 2022 midterm elections, he was the second largest individual donor to the Democrats, dropping nearly $40 million.
And that's just what the public saw. That was the on-the-book stuff. But later, after the collapse, SBS admitted in an interview that he gave just as much, if not more, to Republicans.
But he did it through dark money channels.
Exactly. He used 501c4 organizations and other political vehicles where donor names aren't disclosed to the public. He explicitly told a reporter that he did this because he knew the media is super liberal and he didn't want the bad PR that would come from being a Republican mega donor.
So he was hedging his political bets just like it was a financial trade.
A perfect hedge. If Democrats win, he has a seat at the table.
Huh.
If Republicans win, he calls in the dark money favors he's owed. It's cynical perfection.
And then you have the raw nepotism, his brother, Gabriel Bankman-Fried.
Gabriel ran a lobbying group called Guarding Against Pandemics, a very noble-sounding cause.
Sounds great.
They received $35 million from SBF and Alameda. And look, maybe they had some good intentions, but a lawsuit filed by the bankruptcy estate later alleged they did nothing to prevent pandemics. It looked for all the world like a slush fund to employ family and buy influence in D.C. under the guise of altruism.
And the parents. This is where it gets really uncomfortable.
The bankruptcy estate sued them to recover $32 million in cash and real estate that was given to them by FTX. They were gifted a $16 million home in the Bahamas.
Wait, a $16 million vacation home? For 2 law professors?
Not bad work if you can get it. They denied knowing about the fraud, of course,
Right.
but it just shows how the customer money was leaking out of the company in every conceivable direction. Real estate, politics, family handouts, you name it.
Speaking of real estate, we have to talk about the penthouse. The now infamous Orchid penthouse.
The $40 million dorm room. This
Wow.
was the headquarters. SBF, Caroline Ellison, Gary Wang, Nishad Singh, the whole inner circle lived there together in this massive 5-bedroom luxury apartment.
This goes right back to the Epsilon Theta days at MIT.
It's exactly that. They were running a multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate, but they were living like college students in a group house, sleeping with each other, breaking up, having intense drama, all while eating vegan food delivered by private chefs and, according to testimony, popping stimulant medication to stay awake for days on end.
It creates a complete echo chamber. If everyone you work with is also your roommate, and in some cases your romantic partner, there is no outside voice. There is no one to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't steal $8 billion from our customer.
It was a hermetically sealed bubble of delusion floating on an ocean of stolen money.
Until the bubble popped.
Yeah.
Section 5, the collapse, November 2022. It is hard to overstate how fast this happened. It felt like watching the Soviet Union collapse in a single weekend.
It all started with a leak. CoinDesk, a crypto news site, got its hands on a copy of Alameda's balance sheet. When people who understood finance actually looked at it, they gasped.
Why? What was so shocking on it?
Well, it was full of FTT. FTT was the digital token that FTX had just invented themselves. They literally printed it out of thin air. Alameda's balance sheet was showing billions of dollars in assets, but most of it was this magical internet money that only had value because FTX and SBF said it did.
It's completely circular logic. I am rich because I own $1 billion of Bankman bucks, which are valuable because I, a rich person, say they are.
Exactly. And the market realized in an instant that if FTX ever got into trouble, those FTT tokens would be worth zero. The emperor had no clothes.
And then came the tweet that killed an empire, from Changpeng Zhao, CZ, the CEO of Binance.
SBF's arch rival.
Yeah.
CZ saw the CoinDesk report and tweeted that Binance, which held a lot of FTT from an earlier deal, was going to sell all of his holdings due to recent revelations.
And that was the signal. That was the fire alarm in a crowded theater.
Everyone ran for the exits at once. A classic bank
The
run.
numbers were insane.
$6 billion in withdrawal requests in just 72 hours. And because Alameda had stolen all the liquid cash, FTX couldn't pay. The vault was empty.
SBF tried to bluff his way through it. He sent out that tweet. FTX is fine. Assets are fine.
That tweet is going to go down in history as one of the most expensive and blatant lies ever told. He knew they weren't fine. Behind the scenes, he was frantically calling investors, calling the Saudis, calling anyone he could think of for a bailout. But the hole was just too deep to fill.
November 11th, 2022. He files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. SBF resigns. And the handcuffs come out.
And the trial was a complete spectacle. United States v. Bankman-Fried. The defense strategy from the start was to paint him as this sort of unlucky math nerd.
I'm just a physicist. I don't understand accounting. I got overwhelmed.
Right. I was trying to save the world. The market crashed. Mistakes were made. But there was no intent to defraud anyone. But the prosecution didn't just have documents and spreadsheets. They had the roommates.
This must have been just surreal for him. watching his ex-girlfriend, Caroline Ellison, walk to the witness stand to testify against him.
Her testimony was the absolute nail in the coffin. She was composed, she was credible, she was incredibly detailed. She told the jury about the 7 spreadsheets.
The 7 spreadsheets, what was that?
When Alameda's lenders started getting nervous and asked to see their balance sheet, the real one looked terrible. It showed the massive hole. So SBF directed her and the team to prepare 7 different alternative versions of the balance sheet, each one hiding the loans and the risk in a different way.
Oh my God.
And then he looked at all 7 options and personally picked alternative 7 to send to the lenders. That one act completely destroys the argument of, I made a mistake. You don't accidentally create 7 different fake balance sheets.
SBF ended up taking the stand himself, which is something defense lawyers almost always tell their clients never to do.
It was a Hail Mary pass, and he fumbled it spectacularly. He thought he could outsmart the prosecutor. He thought he could talk his way out of it with philosophical arguments, just like he talked his way into Sequoia's wallet.
But a courtroom is not a VC pitch meeting.
No. In a court, facts matter. He said, I don't recall, or some version of that over 140 times. He came across as evasive, slippery, and arrogant. The jury absolutely hated him.
And the verdict came back, guilty on all 7 counts.
Swiftly and unanimously.
So now we enter the final chapter of this saga, the aftermath. The boy king who wanted to buy the island of Nauru is now an inmate in a federal prison. And the details of his life behind bars are, well, they are a deep dive in and of themselves.
It's a fascinating study in adaptation. First, he was held at MDC Brooklyn, the Metropolitan Detention Center. It's a notoriously rough place. Ghislaine Maxwell was held there, for instance.
And he had the immediate dietary issues.
Right. He's a committed vegan. His lawyers were in court almost immediately, complaining that he was being forced to survive on bread, water, and peanut butter because the prison wasn't providing him with adequate vegan meals. They argued he couldn't prepare for his trial because he was wasting away.
But then he adapted to the internal prison economy. The mackerel.
The Mac. This is my favorite detail of the whole story because it connects so perfectly back to the kimchi premium arbitrage.
How so?
In federal prison, you can't use cash. The currency used to be cigarettes, but now those are banned in most facilities. So the stable currency, the accepted medium of exchange, is the pouch of mackerel fish fillets from the commissary.
It has utility, it's non-perishable, it has a standard, agreed-upon value. It's a commodity currency.
Exactly. And so SBF, the vegan, who doesn't even eat fish, started acquiring and trading Macs. There's a credible report that he paid a fellow inmate 4 packets of mackerel to give him a haircut before his trial.
It's the same skill set. It's arbitrage. He's identifying a market inefficiency. I have a surplus of fish. You have a surplus of barbering skill. And he's executing the trade. He's running a localized version of Alameda research inside the cell block.
It proves that his brain is just hardwired this way. It doesn't turn off. He is a transactional creature. Whether it's global crypto markets or prison barter, he is always calculating the expected value.
And his cellmates. I mean, the writers of this reality show are just working overtime.
As of late 2024, reports came out that he was being housed in a dormitory-style unit with none other than Sean Combs, Diddy.
You can't be serious. Diddy and SBF.
Just picture that conversation. The crypto nerd who thinks in probabilities and the hip-hop mogul who built an empire on image, sitting there on their bunks, trading Macs for commissary snacks.
Both of them having fallen from these massive heights, both facing serious federal time. It's a bizarre and powerful leveling mechanism.
There really is.
But SBF couldn't just stay quiet and do his time. He tried one more leverage play, the Tucker Carlson interview.
This was in March of 2025. It was completely unsanctioned. He somehow got a message out or arranged a phone call. The details are still murky. But he did an interview with Tucker Carlson, basically making a pitch for a pardon from Donald Trump.
What was his argument?
He went right back to the dark money argument he made before. He basically said, hey, remember, I secretly donated to Republicans too. I'm not who you think I am. I'm a victim of the liberal media and the woke mob. Let me out.
And how did that work out for him?
It worked in the sense that he got a lot of attention. But the prison warden didn't appreciate it. He got thrown in solitary confinement for a while and then transferred clear across the country to FCI Terminal Island in Los Angeles.
So he's in LA now, but here is the final and maybe the most confusing twist for the listener. The money. We spent this whole hour talking about how he lost $8 billion of customer money. But recent reports from the bankruptcy estate say the customers might get all their money back. How is that even possible?
This is what some people are calling the anthropic miracle. Back during the wild spending spree days, SBF invested about $500 million of customer money into an AI startup called Anthropic.
The company that makes the Claude AI model.
Yes. And as we all know, AI completely exploded in value after FTX collapsed. That $500 million stake became worth billions and billions of dollars. The bankruptcy estate, which is being led by John J. Ray III, the same guy who cleaned up the Enron disaster, sold that stake at a huge profit.
Wow.
And that, combined with clawing back political donations and other assets, means they now have enough cash to potentially pay customers back over 100% of their claim value in dollar terms.
So does that mean no crime was committed? Is the defense no harm, no foul?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And this is a very dangerous misconception. If I steal your car, drive it to Las Vegas, put your entire life savings on red at the roulette wheel and happen to win, I still stole your car, and I still illegally gambled with your money.
Right.
The fact that the gamble paid off after I was arrested doesn't retroactively authorize the initial theft.
The crime was the risk. The crime was taking the choice away from the customer without their consent.
Precisely. The customers didn't sign up to be angel investors in a speculative AI startup. They thought their money was sitting in a digital vault, safe and sound. SBF gambled it. He just happened to get very, very lucky on one of his bets after he was already in handcuffs.
It's a hell of a story. From a physics lab at MIT to a penthouse in the Bahamas to a prison yard in LA, when you look at this entire arc, what is the one thing that sticks with you the most? What is the core lesson here?
For me, it goes right back to that expected value philosophy we talked about at the beginning. We live in a world, especially in tech and finance, that worships disruption. We love the people who break the rules. The mantra is, move fast and break things.
But sometimes the things you break are federal laws and people's entire life savings.
SBF is the ultimate logical product of a system that says, if you are smart enough and your stated goal is big and noble enough, you don't have to follow the same speed limit as everyone else. He truly thought he was the protagonist of the universe. He thought ethics were, this is a direct quote from him, a dumb game we woke Westerners play.
That quote just haunts me.
It should, because he wasn't alone in that thinking. There are plenty of other founders and visionaries out there right now who believe the same thing. They think they are saving the world so they can cut a few corners today. SBF just took that logic to its absolute catastrophic limit.
It's a powerful reminder that if someone tells you they're going to save humanity, you should probably check to see if they're holding onto your wallet while they say it.
And check if they have a back door written into the code.
Always check the code. And maybe check the market price of mackerel while you're at it.
Always check the fish arbitrage.
That is going to do it for this deep dive. A tragedy, a farce, and a very potent warning, all wrapped up in one. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.
And stay skeptical. See ya!